after a difficult 20-year marriage. My cheating wife had a stroke, and I discover that she lived a double life. While I was grinding to provide, she gave our daughter's college fund away to her parasitical affair partner, had a secret addiction, giving me a disease, and more. What would you have done?
Warning. This story will be unsettling to cheaters who have a secret kept hidden for decades.
Hello Reddit friends. This is my first post here. Since English is not my first language, and since this story spans over several years, I apologize if I make some errors or if I give too much detail. I will make an effort to be straight to the point and to express myself clearly. Nonetheless, this is going to be a rough one. I ask for advice and comments from all of you. I have read many posts on these topics, and although there are always aggressive people in them, I see the majority of well-intentioned people wanting to help. I thank you in advance for your patience and kindness. I am a 48-year-old man. Let's say my name is Arthur. I have been widowed for 2 years. My late wife, I'll call her Amelia, and I met at work 25 years ago, got married 23 years ago, and were together for 20 years. She was 2 years older than me. A very attractive young woman, a real peach and charismatic Latina. She had a fine face, colorful hair, and a distinguished and magnetic feminine physique. I was a good-looking guy back then, and although I'm not tall, I was fit, and I'm light-skinned, which in our country is not so common. I'm not from the US, but from Latin America. I knew that she had a very active social and sentimental life, while I was, and am, a more introverted guy, with good but few friends, very fond of reading and sports. Although I'm quite the rocker, I had a more conservative upbringing, especially when it came to family and relationships. I would never discriminate or be offensive to anyone for being who they are, but I believe in the traditional family for myself. She and I became friends because we shared an afternoon shift at the company where we worked. I was already engaged to a gorgeous girl, and Amelia on her side was dating a lot of guys. I found her attractive, but I was engaged and, like I said, I'm a traditional guy. My girlfriend was less showy, but no less beautiful than Amelia, and I was truly happy. But one day, my girlfriend told me that her life plan was to finish university and pursue studies abroad. Her family was too controlling, which is common in my country, and did not want her to study more. But she aspired to be a top academic, and she wanted to pursue postgraduate studies. For my part, I had a good job and many prospects for growth at 23 years old, and I didn't want to get away from my family and friends, nor did I want to leave the country. So, reluctantly, and because we couldn't make our visions coincide, we broke off the engagement. She went to another country and has lived abroad since then. Around that time, my friendship with Amelia strengthened. She told me that I was right not to get married and took me to a party. She gravitated towards me more than usual and even stepped it up by trying to go further. But I told her that I preferred us to be friends for now because I was still affected by my breakup. She accepted and let it go. A few months later, she suddenly quit the job and took her severance money. There was a voluntary retirement program in the company at that time. She went to travel around Europe for a few months. I regretted watching her leave, but I continued doing my thing. Amelia started sending me a lot of messages through Messenger and the services of those times, around the year 2000. The distance made our friendship grow stronger, and when she returned about 7 months later, we started dating. She insisted on testing us both for STDs before taking the next step. I accepted, even though I knew I was healthy because my ex-fiancé and I took great care of each other and were both of the faithful kind. But Amelia, well, she had had a troubled life. I came out clean from the tests. She said she did too. We started being intimate, and although we took care of each other, within a few months, she became pregnant. I was happy, ecstatic even, and told her that we should have the child and get married. She took it very differently. She was upset and scared. It took her a few days before she could accept it as a blessing, She finally did, and we rushed to get married. It was a simple wedding in front of our closest families and our closest friends. After all the bliss and love, it didn't take long before the problems began. The first problem came up when we began to go to medical appointments for pregnancy checkups. In my country, they are mandatory, both within public social security or private services. There, through her gynecologist, I learned that Amelia had had an abortion shortly before, and that she had HPV, which is the human papilloma virus. By the time the abortion had been performed just before her resignation from her job and her trip to Europe, I got tested again and discovered that now I also had HPV. She hadn't told me anything about the abortion, nor the HPV, quite the opposite. She told me that she had come out clean in her analysis. She agreed to have skipped that specific part of the test results because HPV is harmful in women and does nothing to men, she said. I felt shocked. Remember, I am a bit traditional. But I was very much in love, and Amelia added that she had decided to abort because the child was not her then boyfriend's, but from another man. And therefore she did not want it, but now she was committed to the pregnancy. I know that can be considered a big red flag, but let's remember that I was in love. I had just turned 24, and I was convinced, because Amelia told me at the time that she wanted to change her life and settle down with me and our son. Yes, it was a boy. So I decided to stick to the idea that my relationship with her was a clean slate between the two of us. The doctor gave me a quick talk about HPV, and I have never had any problems so far, no warts or, thank God, cancer. I check myself frequently anyway. Our son was born. Amelia and I took care of him, and little by little we created a loving family. Amelia found a good job. Although not everything was easy, we grew up, and 3 years later we had a second child, this time a girl. I felt kinds of happiness I never experienced before. Amelia was a dedicated mother. I was a very present father, and we both worked hard for our family. But things were not going perfectly smooth, and the second serious problem came knocking on the door. Amelia had ups and downs regarding her mood and character. Although to people outside she was a perfect wife, loving and fun, at home she was moody, silent, and distant. She sometimes had outbursts of aggression. I asked her to see a doctor, and she made an appointment with a psychologist, and he referred her to a psychiatrist. They ordered her to have some tests done. Amelia said she would be under observation. She later said that she had been prescribed a mild medication for anxiety. One day, when our daughter was 3 years old, my mother-in-law asked us to take the children with her for the weekend to her house, to spend the night and cook and play. We thought that was a great idea. I imagined that would give us time for a weekend alone, maybe a romantic outing. I had proposed doing it several times, but Amelia only wanted to travel with the kids, and she always postponed or rejected any plans alone. The truth is that our intimate love life was not very active at all. I tried and initiated a lot because I was deeply in love with her, and she was very beautiful and desirable, but she always said that she didn't feel like it. She later added that the medicine didn't help her libido either. I was frustrated, but respected her boundaries. I tried to talk about it and suggested going to therapy, but she refused. Well, on Friday of that weekend, I planned for us to go to the movies and have a drink within the same neighborhood. I invited her to go and she accepted, but said that she had a commitment for noon. We agreed to meet at the house before dinner time. I felt like it was a first date. I went to get a haircut, bought a new shirt and quality perfume. I didn't usually wear them. I'm more of the type that smells like soap and deodorant. Everything set up to be attractive to her. The moment came, and silence hit my face. Amelia didn't arrive. She sent me a message saying that she was with a friend and that she would come later. She twice added more messages, delaying her arrival. She took so long that I fell asleep. I was sad and upset, and went to take a sleeping pill to call it a night. Fast asleep, I still woke up because she made quite some noise when she arrived. It was 5 o'clock in the morning. She smelled of strong alcohol. She told me that she and her friends had been drinking up to half an hour before. I was furious and disappointed, and I didn't want to hear it, and rolled over in bed. she got the message and didn't try to say anything else. There were a few years of almost total estrangement. I was very hurt, but my mother and my close friends advised me to calm down and just talk to her. I didn't want to take the risk of being away from my children, and I focused on them and my work. I made big steps career-wise during those years, and I greatly increased our standard of living. We were able to buy a house and another property on top of that, change cars frequently, and take long vacations around the country and some nearby ones as luxurious mini vacations. But the relationship between Amelia and I was at a standstill. She wouldn't come near me, and I was the one just catching the hits, feeling lonely and hurt in a marriage. We go years without having any intimacy. Amelia became an upper-middle-class lady now, with a suburban car to go wherever she wanted, expensive clothes and money for a prestige gym, pool, and regular visits to her beauty salon. I became a well-paid executive, respected in my industry and envied by some. Some will ask me why I resisted so much, if we were going nowhere. Well, I didn't sit around doing nothing. We went to several couples therapies that failed, because Amelia boycotted them in one way or another. I tried every few weeks to approach her and talk in depth. I constantly told her what I was attracted to, and those were the same things that I loved about her. Our children are also great kids, loving, and have never caused any serious problems. As a person who believes in God, I had faith that Amelia's troubles would eventually become more clear to herself, that she would understand that she was harming her family, and would stop. She often accepted outright that her behavior was detrimental to us, so she promised to go to therapy and would change for a while. But she always relapsed. Yes, I know I should have been more firm perhaps, but love for my wife blinded me for many years. I just wanted us to be happy, all of us. Then came a very nice streak at the company. I completed several projects with praise that resulted in me receiving chunky bonuses, and in particular, I got the position to direct a project that required me to live an entire year in Europe. I felt amazing and on top of the world. I could go with the whole family, and my children would attend a bilingual school. I would receive a generous additional salary, and we would also have time to travel and see different countries, and the distances in Western Europe are comparatively short with those of America. Amelia, in theory, loved Europe and had encouraged me to fight for that project and move it forward, the quicker the better. But when I actually won it, it went downhill fast. Her mood became worse than ever, and she went from being distant to being rude and unpleasant to me. She even began to go after our children, who were already teenagers and whom, when they were children, she always treated overly strict and short-tempered in a severe way, but still considerate and in a non-violent way. Although we traveled a lot and saw the wonderful works, landscapes, and people, our core memories of Europe are quite bitter. Amelia grew worse than ever in terms of aggression. She became jealous and controlling of me and our children, and at the same time, increasingly secretive about herself. It's not like I went whining to family members, complaining about my wife, the mother of my children. The thing is, people around us started noticing it too. You couldn't unsee it when it's that much aggression. Her family reached out to me, telling me they had to help us and intervene by organizing an actual intervention. Plans were made, we got together, but I have to mention I wasn't involved in that part, which was the best, because this way I wasn't luring her in a trap, and it would backlash when she got me alone. So it happened. We talked to her and told her that she was hurting us, and that she needed to stop and get professional help. Yes, the kids were involved, and I supported them to express themselves freely. Amelia said she was totally shocked by our children's and family's words and their worries, and never thought she was that bad or awful in her behavior. She showed remorse, guilt, and showered us with promises to seek treatment. She admitted to having stopped taking her medication and to having lied about the supposed online therapy she was receiving before, when we asked her about her mental health issues. The timing was okay because the intervention happened during a trip back to family, and our time in Europe was coming to an end. So soon after, when we returned to our country, things got worse, way worse, because the pandemic began, which affected the whole world, but our situation too. Although I could do my work from home without problems, and the children's schools also quickly started their online programs, the environment was tense and increasingly toxic. Amelia left the family room where she would normally hang out and moved to the study where she worked on her own things, which was on another floor of the house. She told me that it was a recommendation from her new psychologist, whom she began to consult. Things were deteriorating, more and more. She spent days locked up. She sometimes stopped bathing for 2 or 3 days, while our household rule is that we always used to shower daily. Even our housekeeper, a woman of a certain age, felt deeply embarrassed when she had to approach me, but felt safe enough to tell me that whenever my wife interacted with her, it was unpleasant, or scary even. My wife didn't want her to clean her study, or touch and put away her things. It became a more normal thing that Amelia became estranged from our family, and she only spoke to a couple of friends named Becky and Beth. They were from different backgrounds and were not friends with each other. Becky was a woman very focused, finding reasons and claiming it could all be explained with vibes and horoscopes. Beth was more sensible and down to earth. I always thought that she was an intelligent woman and that she was a good influence on Amelia because she was interested in art and history and other positive subjects. But as time passed, Amelia was getting closer to Becky and less to Beth. From a receipt from our cable company, I discovered that Amelia was renting XXX movies on the PPV service. I attributed it to her extreme loneliness and didn't think much of it. But then one day, she asked me to help her with her computer because it was paralyzed by a computer virus. Upon cleaning her computer of the Trojan virus, I discovered that her system was loaded with perverse material, even degrading things, which surprised and distressed me. I am not a Puritan, and I consider those needs to be natural and desirable, even without love involved, if 2 people agree to do it for fun. But the things Amelia looked at gave me the feeling of dreadful anxiety, confronting me to the fact I don't know anything about my wife. Then came the crisis. Amelia one day blatantly accused me of cheating on her. After yelling her accusations at me, leaving me standing there like a rock, she rushed towards me, going for my phone. She took it with force even though I didn't resist. God, I even put it up for her to grab it more easily. She checked the messages on my phone, and I just let her. I didn't have anything to hide. She found some conversation from recent months that I had with the ex-fiancé I mentioned from the start, which is from so many years before. And yes, we had resumed contact, but not for something sinister by any means, and the conversations with the UPS driver were longer than that. She, as I said, lived outside the country. Well, to be more specific, through mutual friends, I learned that her youngest son, she was married and had 2 children, had been hospitalized due to the virus and was seriously ill, so I sent her a message wishing her everything was fine. She thanked me and told me that the child, fortunately, had overcome the illness. And we began to talk from time to time about our lives and our children. These talks were never more in any way, nor did they have a flirtatious tone of any kind. The most intimate thing we did was remember. Laughing, talking about our first date, which took place next to a well-known monument in our city. Well, those talks upset Amelia, who accused me of being unfaithful, and asked me to divorce her. There it is. My patience is over. I talked to my children and explained everything to them in detail, even showing them the chats. I explained to them, which was true, that if their mother and mine's relationship had even been normal, and if she had not stopped talking to me for months and had moved rooms, it was likely that I would never have texted as much about 8 times with that ex-fiancé, now a renowned and married academic who lived 10,000 kilometers away. Amelia kept her promise and left the house. She lived for a few days with Becky, before renting a small house a 5-minute walk from our home. She told me that she needed a period of reflection, and after that, she would claim custody of the kids. That seemed unreal to me. Our oldest was about to move out of town to go to university, and our youngest would take just a little longer to do so, maybe 2 years and a few more months, tops. I called the kids to join me for a talk. My son, the oldest, who has always had a mediating nature, said perhaps spending those remaining months in the city with Mom would help her deal with her issues. My daughter thought the same, and I felt sad, but won't force them to reconsider. Amelia lived alone, with hardly any contact with us, for 4 months. She sometimes called me over to her new house. During one visit, she talked about how she could only forgive me for my infidelity if we would do it in her new bed. I was very taken aback, but I agreed, and we were intimate for the first time in years. Strange thing is, Amelia asked me to use protection. I knew she couldn't get pregnant because she wanted tubal ligament surgery when our youngest daughter was born. This is a type of permanent birth control. I asked her to explain what for. She told me that she was taking treatment for HPV, and the doctor had told her that she should use protection during the deed. After that, our relationship changed in a weird way, with her sending me aggressive messages, asking me for more money than we agreed monthly, so she could support herself, to sending me grown-up pictures of herself and spamming me messages filled with suggestive comments. I thought that this could be the beginning of a solution and a way to overcome this family crisis, so I accepted those advances. But it was as if I was interacting with two different people. There was an aggressive, tough Amelia, interested in money and who demanded a divorce, and another more similar to the girl I knew in my youth, daring, provocative, playful, and beautiful. I started going to therapy for myself because I didn't know what to do. Our children moved in with their mother after around 4 months. From the first day they told me that Amelia was aggressive and harsh with them, that she constantly badmouthed their dad, me, and accused them of being on their dad's side. They then confessed to me that they had no choice but to go to their mom, and they had chosen to go with her, because Amelia told them, and threatened, to unalive herself if they didn't. In our culture, this is the ultimate taboo act. They were very intimidated by her, and didn't tell me anything at first. I confronted Amelia immediately. Of course, she denied everything. The kids told me that Amelia and Beth had grown apart and ended their friendship. I was sorry to hear that because Beth was, like I mentioned, a positive influence, and she was always kind and empathetic to us and our children. It was obvious that things were getting out of control. The months that followed were terrible. Amelia was verbally violent towards the kids and me. Then she repeated the cycle of excluding herself, this time by locking herself in another room. She told people that I was making her miserable, even though I covered all the expenses. But the expenses were over the charts, and it became more and more expensive to support this new loony arrangement. Then came the end. My older brother passed suddenly one day of a heart attack. It devastated me. Amelia was very tender and supportive that one day. The next, she visited me and from the get-go made a series of ironic and out-of-place comments about my brother's passing. I told her she's on the thinnest ice she has ever been and to stop it. She scoffed, saying if anything it was too soon. I exploded. I told her to leave, and from now on we'll cut off all contact, except for matters involving the kids. A few weeks later our son moved to college. He left crying. His mother made sure to insult him before leaving, telling him that he would never do anything in life without her, and calling him a traitor for leaving her behind. For my son, who has always been a great son, it was rough to be called that by his mom. Her next victim was our youngest daughter. She started to double down on being controlling and strict. She wouldn't give her permission to see her friends or to have a boyfriend. She was 16, she was starting to date boys. She obsessively checked her phone and iPad activities. At the same time, she swore to all our mutual friends that I had a lover on the side, and that as soon as we divorced, I would marry her. And if they asked who this affair partner was, she gave the name of my ex-fiancé, who, as I already said, is a married woman with children, with an important academic position and living in a very distant country. The rumor mill did its thing, and many mutual friends started to believe it. As I noticed, they began to treat me coldly. There were some terrible months of loneliness, missing my children, and always having to defend our little girl from her mother, who took her every chance to be difficult. We began divorce proceedings, and I asked for custody of my daughter. Our daughter agreed, to which Amelia became furious. and she blocked the divorce process until we agreed on joint custody. Although I managed to settle in such a way, she couldn't take the house from me. Everything happened so fast, it was like a bad dream. Soon after that, one day, I received a call from Amelia's cell phone. It was Becky. Apparently Amelia had fainted while they were jogging through the park and they had to call the paramedics. When I arrived, she was gone. She passed, suddenly. Doctors said she had a stroke. The autopsy found nothing conclusive. I asked the doctors if it could be possible that she had a serious problem for years without us knowing, and that would explain her behavioral problems, her aggression, her emotional swings. The doctor did some more tests and analysis, and couldn't conclude anything else either. Sometimes people just act badly, and it's not because of their organs, he told me. I couldn't believe this happened. Not only had I lost the mother of my children, but I felt an overwhelming guilt. Maybe if I had forced her to take care of herself and treat herself and exhaust all medical avenues, we could have had another life, and she could have stayed alive, in fact. The doctor told me not to torture myself, that many health problems escape all analysis. The truth is that the tests that were performed on Amelia at the time found no signs of anything abnormal. In the autopsy, they also didn't find tumors, malformations, parasites, or anything strange. Just the effusion, a venous problem. The first months felt like a period of disbelief. We all felt it. I asked my son, when he visited us, if he could take charge of closing down Amelia's social accounts and recovering family photos from her phone and computer. When I asked him, I had forgot about what I found on her computer before, and it's natural for me to ask my son, as he is more technical. My son started to check, but he stopped almost immediately and told me, "Dad, you have to take care of this." I started taking over and took it upon me, and my world collapsed even more in the next few minutes. I discovered that Amelia had a lover. On top of that she had him all these years. It was the same guy who had gotten her pregnant the first time. Let's say his name was Brad. I found years of messages, emails, photographs, audios. It was horrific. I spent days on it like a crazy person, reading, listening, and watching all of the nightmare fuel material. Remember that Amelia gave me HPV? Well, its origin was found in this little guy. Do you remember that one night she didn't come home? Well, guess who she was with in a seedy motel? Do you remember that she collapsed when I told her we were going to live in Europe for a year, and that she behaved like a demon with us, her husband and her children? Well, it was because for a year she would have to be away from Brad. With Brad, as I saw in the messages and emails, Amelia was adoring, playful, spicy, sweet, funny, kind-loving, and understanding, regardless of the moment. Although they drifted apart at times, Brad was married, had children, and had gotten divorced somewhere down the line, they always came back to talk, see each other, and do everything they did together. I realized that my worst times with Amelia had been during the best times with Brad. Whenever Brad had disappeared from the scene for an extended time, those were the healthiest and best periods we had with Amelia. Over the years, they took advantage of technology and went from using email, ICQ, and Messenger to using Skype, Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and WhatsApp. And they had a romance that lasted the same length as my marriage, but with a lot more thrills and fun. While I was breaking my back working for my family and doing my part in raising our wonderful children, she fulfilled her secret desires and let her marriage collapse while secretly hooking up. It hurt me to know that Brad and Amelia were making fun of me, that they called me Mr. Important, and that Amelia said I was a desperate teenage lover, while Brad was perfect. I also realized that she went from speaking well of our children, while they were children and docile, to continually complaining about them as they grew older and became more independent. But the worst blow was yet to come, when a few months later I thought I was over all that, and we could start focusing on a better life. In the meantime, I talked to my son to find out what he had seen that day on her computer. Luckily, he had only seen the part of the videos and the first page of history of her search results. But it seemed that Amelia, even after releasing us from her grip, still had a surprise nuke coming for her family. For years, we saved some college funds for our children. They were charged from the common account, to make sure there was always more than enough resources to invest in their future. With that money, our son was able to move. Well, when the time came to collect my daughter's college zero savings, I discovered that Amelia had collected it early, and there was no cent left. She betrayed the future of her own blood. The problem is not the money, because luckily I have a great job and I can pay for whatever is necessary. The problem is the betrayal of our daughter, of the trust of her family. And the worst thing is that that money, as I found out in the messages with Brad, was that she had given that money to her parasite affair partner, without having any kind of document signed, like a support gift. Brad was going through a tough time financially because he was a good-for-nothing divorcee while hopping dead-end jobs that would spit him out after short periods, which made it hard to keep up with paying his own child support. So, of course, Amelia, in her bright and giving mind, gave him our daughter's college money. I went full ballistic crazy. I called the insurance company to complain, and they told me that they had notified me by postal letter and email about the issue. I never saw those emails, of course. Deep in my problems with Amelia, I was stupid enough to think that these were common bills, like the ones that arrived every month, so I didn't check them. Both Amelia and I were legal representatives and could withdraw the money ourselves, without the other's signature or authorization. You know, the type of contract one signs when one trusts one's partner. So not only have I discovered that my entire life was a lie, but we lost my daughter's entire college fund. To add more frustration, when I was going through my old messages, I found one from Beth, Amelia's former friend, who told me that Amelia had confessed to her about her affair with Brad. Beth, who is a person of conscience and dignity, was horrified, ended the friendship, and sent me a message telling me everything, which I didn't see until it was too late. I blame myself for missing this message. Maybe I could have saved some of those funds, and my kids from this evil. I'm beginning to realize Amelia couldn't have been treated. I'm devastated, confused, broken, and I had to get more answers. I texted Beth, told her about my discoveries and being up to date. I asked her to tell me everything she knows in detail, to see if I can find traces of the money or a way to get it back. I thought about confronting Brad, but on one hand, I would probably get out of control violent towards him if I saw him. On the other hand, there is no document that shows that he is legally obligated to return the money. He could say it was a gift, and it would be difficult to prove that it wasn't. The audios and messages that talk about it are ambiguous, and I doubt that a court will be able to demand him to return the money. Also, I don't think his squeaky clean conscience moves him to do the right thing. What conscience? If he was the lover of a married woman for more than 20 years, even when he himself had a family? Then, of course, a whole new problem rose up too. It hit me in the face. Are my children biologically mine? The suspicion overtook my mind, although they bear a good physical resemblance to my biological family. Both Amelia and I have light skin, and the kids are the same, while Brad has more of a Latin skin, although with European features. I convinced my children to take some tests on a DNA service website to learn more about our European and indigenous ancestors, because I did not want to tell them anything about my suspicions and made sure to avoid adding more suffering on their backs. The tests showed a very high correspondence with me, the first relief in this whole ordeal. I told them that the results had not come back clear, and then we had to do a full paternity test, which confirmed that they are 100% mine. I felt true happiness, the one real moment of joy I've had lately. Anyway, this is my story so far. It's sad, and I hope that none of you reading this has gone through something like this, or will ever go through it in your lives. I'm still considering to confront Brad, or find a way to get that money back, but I don't know how yet. I'm sure that when I know everything from Beth, I'll find out more details and something will occur to me. For now, this is the end. I am infinitely grateful to those who have reached this point in my story. I will also greatly appreciate your comments and advice. Thank you all.
I am sorry to seem so harsh, but my God, there were a million obvious red flags that you refused to acknowledge when you were with your wife. I have no idea if you were codependent, but by reading this, even if you never found out about the cheating, there were other reasons to divorce this low-quality woman, but you stayed. Why did you allow her to treat you and your children this way? Many people would have walked away when they found out about the HPV, but you stayed. Your wife refused to do date nights with you. The one date night she said that she would do, she spent the night out with someone else. Seriously? You still stayed. The aftermath is on you. It hit you all over the face, and you never acknowledged that this woman was horrible. You should have taken your children and ran yet again. You stayed. I truly hope that none of your children end up in a relationship with a serial cheating narcissist, because you showed them that it was okay to stay with one, because that's what you did their entire lives. Please seek intensive therapy for yourself and your children.
Thanks for telling me the raw truth. I know what you say is true. It's funny that in my professional field I'm a determined, focused, and anything but too kind or shy type. But in my love for Amelia, I accepted enduring things I never should have. I know. Both my children and I are in professional therapy and trying to improve. Thank you.
I'd have zero problems confronting this Brad person and asking for my child's money back. You won't get it, but I'd need to release my anger somehow. It just goes to show how affairs thrive in fantasy and make-believe. Oh, Brad is so perfect. Meanwhile, he can't string 2 nickels together to pay child support? It's laughable, really. And he borrows money from his lover to do so? And Amelia thinks he's all that, when in reality, he's just a financial leech, probably using her for money from the get-go.
Thank you for your comment. Amelia undoubtedly enjoyed the financial advantages of the family we formed, but she also worked for many years as well, both at her job and with our children. For many years, she never gave a sign of being a leech. As for confronting Brad, yes, I've thought about it. In my country, unlike what happens in the USA, you cannot always trust the justice, the judges or authorities. Almost no one finds justice from the system. Confronting Brad in search of justice would mean, in my case, taking it into my own hands. I'm not willing to do that, especially because I know I'm not a saint either, but I couldn't do nothing. So I've talked to his employers and some key people around him, spreading what he has done and the aftermath on our family. I know things have gotten a lot worse for him. I don't need the money, but I like to think that he doesn't deserve to come out of this tragedy intact. Thank you.
The conclusion I made to hearing your story is that Amelia is a bipolar whore.
I understand your point, although I have to confess that hearing you call her that makes my soul jump with irritation. Maybe you're right, but I loved her for so many years that even knowing what she did, I still don't use that language to describe her. Sometimes I think she has been punished enough now for losing all the years she could have had with a family that loved her. All the best to you.
I apologize for being so blunt. Sadly, your entire relationship was a lie. She lied to you about being disease-free. She gave you a disease. Please get a full STD and STI panels, including HIV. Diseases can lay dormant. You want to hold her memory on a pedestal instead of actually facing the fact you had a broken marriage. Be honest with yourself. Then your true healing can begin. Appreciate that you have 2 beautiful children from this union. Live your life to the fullest in the present and not in the past.
Luckily, I had regular medical tests done, and I am completely clean. HPV doesn't go away, though, but I haven't had any kind of consequences from it. The doctor tells me that 90% of adult humans carry it. I'm rebuilding my life on new foundations now. It has been a rough learning experience, but as I tell my children, at least we are still here. Thank you very much for your concern.
I had a client years ago who discovered that his wife had a long-term affair after she passed. He decided to confront her affair partner directly. He went to his home only to discover the affair partner's young and pretty wife. The plan changed on the spot. He told the young wife all about her husband having a 10-year affair with his now passed wife and how he will never get satisfaction or vengeance. The wife realized that their entire relationship was a lie. They began to talk. The affair partner was none the wiser. Their relationship flourished, and he eventually seduced the pretty wife and, on one fateful day, ran off with her. AP got an email saying that he interfered in a marriage and losing his was payback. Client married the other guy's wife, had kids and a life. AP bounced from one woman to the next, defeated and grumbling.
God, that sounds like an even more complicated story than mine. I don't want revenge. Brad is also already divorced, and as far as I know, he has no relationship with his ex-wife or his children. I am trying to rebuild my life and rest assured that I will not ignore red flags again. But we have to trust again, because what kind of life is a life without love? And what kind of love does not have trust? Thank you.
Before we conclude this story, it came to my attention that there are many YouTubers that re-upload my content by simply putting another background into their episode.
Oh my God!
If you hear this audio anywhere else than on Royal A.I, it means they stole it. Be sure to watch Royal A.I if you like this type of content. What would you advise OP? Let us know in the comments. Don't forget to smack the like button, and if you have a story you're willing to share, email it to contactroyalai@gmail.com. See you in the next one.